is ring announcer Thomas Triber. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the time has arrived for Inside Boxing Weekly. So here are your hosts, Mike Goodpaster, John Einreinhofer, and Jeremiah Preisser on the Grueling Truth Sports Network.
Welcome, everybody, to Inside Boxing Weekly on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. Inside Boxing Weekly is brought to you by the Retired Boxers Foundation. Make sure you go to Facebook. Check out the Retired Boxers Foundation, Alex Ramos, Jackie Richardson. They do a great job there, so make sure you check them out. I'm your co-host for the show, Mike Goodpaster. Right now, I'd like to welcome in my other co-host. First up, Jeremiah Preisser. How you doing, Jeremiah?
I'm always doing good. Always excited to talk boxing with you fellas, so let's get it going.
And, of course, the head of the Rocky Fielding Fan Club, John Einreinhofer. John, how you doing?
Mike, good to be here. I'm
tough loss this last weekend for your guy.
I'm trying to forget about last weekend's fights as quickly as possible and hope for better this Saturday, where we have a lot of fights this Saturday.
So I think the big question after this Alvarez-Rocky fight has to be, where does Rocky go from here, John?
Well, into retirement would be a good option. If I can give him that advice, I think that, I don't know if you want to call it quit while you're ahead, but after whatever he got paid for that quote unquote effort Saturday night, not continuing would be a good idea. I just feel fortunate that I take these fights for what they are. The WBA regular meant nothing to me. I'm old school, where 168 pounds doesn't even mean anything to me. So I was just looking at it as Canelo fought 3 months ago, which isn't that long ago in the modern era, and he's fighting again. It was just like an over-the-weight fight like the old-timers had.
You know the thing I found the coolest,
that's it.
And I know you'll understand this, John, but it's when they start talking to Sugar Ray Leonard before the fight, and they're trying to make it look like Saul Alvarez is fighting somebody at the ilk of Donnie Lalonde.
Yeah, I liked it better when Sugar Ray called him on Twitter Roger Fields, and he didn't even know his name. That was appropriate for the fight. So that was, to me, people were laughing. I said that was great. When Sugar Ray, I thought that was the perfect way to categorize.
Well, I think Donnie Lalonde today could fly in from Costa Rica and take Fielding out quicker than Alvarez did.
Well, he would be a more dangerous opponent. At least he could punch, with his right hand. So he'd still be probably more dangerous.
All right. So, Jeremiah, do you want to address this fight, or do you just want to move on?
Well, I mean, it was a mismatch, but funny enough, Rocky Fielding was in the top 10. I mean, so that shows you, it really highlights how bad 168 is. If anything, I mean, Fielding is okay, but, if this isn't leading into something like Callum Smith, then, I don't know what it means, but, it's a quick turnaround for Canelo Alvarez, so I'm not going to give him too hard of a time for this.
I will. It's just like not fighting anybody.
Well, no, but are you...
Come on, it is. Rocky Fielding has no business being ranked in the top 10 of anything, at any weight.
Well, $36 million for that glorified sparring session, I would take it.
Yes, but I thought this is what we were railing about. We need to see fights. I mean, There's got to be somebody at the bottom of the top 10 who would have been a safe bet for him that could have at least made it look like an actual boxing match.
Well, yeah, and then he could have defended, the middleweight championship of the world. I would have preferred that as well. And, I know we go on about, how things are. I'm just not going to be too hard just because this doesn't really – I mean, he's squeezing in a second fight for the year, and, it's not affecting his schedule for next year. So, again, I'm not going to be too hard on him. But, again, let's just hope that for next year, he either gives Golovkin, the third fight, or Daniel Jacobs his fight. Because, in my opinion, those two are clearly more deserving than either one, anybody ranked in the top 10 right now. I know some people would say, oh, well, Charlo, the Charlo brother, he deserves it because he's a mandatory. I don't care about any of that nonsense. Jacobs is most proven. Golovkin's most proven. That's what I really want to see.
And I don't think anybody needs to see Charlo and Canelo because I don't think Charlo's deserves it yet. Do you, John? I mean, who's he beating?
Well, I actually see that one like Jeremiah. I kind of like Golovkin with Matarosian. If Canelo fights Jacobs or Golovkin, that's what I think it should be as well. If he defends the real middleweight title against Jacobs or Golovkin in May, I give him a pass. I give Canelo a pass for the Rocky Fielding.
Yeah, but you know what? Veins Martirosyan would have beat the hell out of Rocky Fielding.
Yeah, he's a better fighter than Rocky Fielding.
See, Veins Martirosyan I would have accepted because I have some respect for him as a boxer. Rocky Fielding was just bad. And that's what I'm talking about. It's kind of like when George Foreman defended his title against Jose Roman. Not much. But
it's worse because Fielding just never has beaten anybody. His one-name opponent, Callum Smith, he got blown away by previously. I think Jeremiah makes a point that I think is important too. To me, it is 168 being that bad, and that's Exhibit A for the too many weight classes. We don't need that class. We never did. The alphabet's just created for money. It wasn't out of any need for safety or any other reason. And as Jeremiah pointed out, I looked at it again after the fight. I knew it going in, but it's just such a head scratcher that, Fielding being on the edge of the top 10 at 168 pounds, that's why, legitimate organizations like, Transnational in the Ring, I mean, if that's where he's legitimately ranked, that's Exhibit A for we don't need that division. He's not, anybody who's watched boxing long enough, the guy's not a top 10 level fighter, like you said, Mike. He's just not. And a couple of people were trying to defend it afterwards. A lot of people weren't. A lot of people that have seen boxing a long time were straight out saying just how bad Fielding was. That's the way I saw it. I think he was a level below other fighters who maybe weren't the greatest who got shots at big fights.
I think he was a level below my wife's ability in a ring. He was bad. I mean, it was embarrassing. And the thing that was really embarrassing to me is how DAZN tries to sell it as Canelo Alvarez versus Rocky.
Yeah, it was embarrassing. It was an embarrassing sell.
Right.
Yeah, not only that. Not only that. Now some of these people are trying to pass Canelo Alvarez off as a 3-division champion, which is even more embarrassing in my opinion. Come on. I mean, Fielding didn't even last as long as Matthew Hatton, who had no business fighting at 154 years ago. I mean, Liam Smith made a better show of it than, Rocky Fielding did. I mean, if Fielding's a big guy, he obviously had the size advantage. He used none of it. I mean, his response afterwards was, well, I thought I could bang with him. What on earth would give you that idea that you could infight with Canelo Alvarez? And I actually think the division is bad enough, I respect, the guys who entered the World Boxing Super Series. That's all good and well. I actually think Canelo Alvarez would beat Callum Smith, too, if they paired him. To me, Smith is a bit like Fielding.
Yeah, but I think that would be an entertaining fight, at least.
I do, too. I think Callum Smith has a better grasp of distance. I mean, overall, he's just a better fighter. But you look at them stylistically, and Fielding fights like Callum Smith in the sense that they both have that high guard. They don't move their hands as much as they should sometimes. It's one of those, they don't move their head all that well either. So, I mean, I think Alvarez could fight Callum Smith, because some of those rumors have been floating around too. I think he could fight Callum Smith and beat him, in some big showdown in the UK too. But, that's not what I'm hoping for.
My only worry is this. With an 11-fight contract that pays him that much money, John, I'm just afraid we're going to get more of this than we get of him fighting Triple G and Jacobs or Charlo or whoever.
I agree 100%, Mike. And that's I try to be an equal opportunity criticizer based on just what I see different TV operations doing, promoters. And that's why, some people have gotten on me because I've been hard on this DAZN deal. I'm not saying on our show, but, just Twitter, things like that. And others haven't. But, I mean, I don't like what you see there. That's what I don't like either. I mean, apparently, only some of Canelo's money is guaranteed as well, is my understanding. And yeah, I just don't see this deal. They don't. I don't see how they can make it work economically without getting pay-per-view money or a higher subscription fee. So if they're not going to get more money and they're going to try to go with the $9.99 a month, I think you're going to get the opponents you're talking about, Mike. And
well, I think what you're going to get is they're not going to last the entire contract.
No, I think they might not either. But like Jeremiah said, I think I'm starting to smell that we're going to maybe get Callum Smith, and Callum Smith is a better puncher than Fielding. But like Jeremiah said, stylistically, and Smith before the Groves fight had some fights where he was letting people get too close to him. And even though I'm a big believer in Canelo's ability, I hate to draw much out of a fight like we just had. But you can see, people underestimate Canelo's speed, and he's even faster than these guys at the higher weights. And I think you're going to keep seeing that, especially while he's in his 20s. He's 28 now, before he slows up at all, really. He's going to be too fast for a lot of these guys, these 168-pound guys.
Now, wait a second, John. Great. He's just too good for him overall, because there's not a 168 right. out there. I mean, come on, Gilberto Ramirez. I mean, if that's the best you've got, you might as well give it up, because he's a guy that has been basically babied by Bob Arum into the position he's in. He's beaten nobody. I mean, Jesse Hart is a decent fighter. That's it. And at 168, there's no competition, which is why a guy like Rocky Fielding can slip into a top 10.
Yeah, Canelo's either going to have some good fights at middleweight defending his lineal title, and if De La Hoya takes him away from that because he wants to pick up some easy fights at 168 on the zone first, usually guys don't go back down in weight. That's when I've even said, a couple months ago, and I see it even more than ever, Canelo's story is probably going to end up, people don't see it now, but it's the way it ends up. And it will be interesting. Canelo's story will probably end at light heavyweight. I think you can see it coming, and there's better fighters there at the higher weight. And if he ends up not, it'd be a shame, but if he ends up not back down at middleweight, his next challenges will probably end up coming there down the road, not with these guys that are hanging around 168 pounds.
All right, let's go ahead and look at something that may be a little bit better this weekend. We'll see. I think there are a few really good matchups coming up. We'll start off with Tony Harrison against Jermell Charlo. Just let me know if any of these guys have been pulled out for testing positive for PEDs on either side. John, what's your take on this one?
I'm really excited about the PBC Fox deal, except, again, being equal opportunity criticizer. I'm positive that's on regular Fox. It's free. That's a good thing. I'm hoping something just goes good with this card, but I don't like the fights, particularly that they're starting off with. Tony Harrison, he's got some skills. He did look good as a prospect coming up, but he got stopped by Willie Nelson. Then he got stopped by Hurd. No shame in getting stopped by Hurd, of course, but there was a fight in between there where he was fighting a journeyman type guy after the Nelson fight, and he was in bad trouble late in the fight. He had to hang on.
That was Sosa, wasn't it?
I got
George Sosa. The guy was like 15-11 or something.
Yeah, it was right. It was right after the Nelson fight. I'll say that. So I just, Jermell Charlo's the weaker punching of the two Charlos. He's been punching better since he got with Derek James. That's probably going to be too much for Tony Harrison. The best you can say for Tony Harrison is there's no problems with his offensive skills. He does have offensive skills. So, maybe he can bring a little bit for a while, but he just hasn't had the chin and the resiliency, and I don't see any reason why it's going to turn up against Jermell Charlo. Some people think this one could be the sleeper. I don't. Out of the three fights, this is the one that I probably – actually the opposite. I just don't think that Harrison has what it takes to get by Jermell Charlo.
You agree, Jeremiah?
Well, yeah. There isn't many other ways to look at it, to be honest. My thinking, though, however, with all this VADA controversy, the Charlo brothers missing their testing, I'm wondering if it's, a little something else that's giving them some punching power, not necessarily the trainer, But, Harrison's a good fighter. He always seems to hang in there in the early going. He's a rock-solid boxer, and a lot of people had high hopes for him initially. But he just defensively, he's got too many flaws. He seems to fade late. He just doesn't have the size, I think, to hang with Charlo. He's a good fighter. He's done some good things against some good guys, but he's just not on that level. And even if we look at the Charlo brothers and there's still a lot to be wanted, they've still proven more than Tony Harris has. They're just more consistent. They look sharper. I really like both of their jabs. It's a pace dictator. So, yeah, I think it's going to be a mid-round stoppage for Charlo. And, hopefully he'll move on to bigger and better things. I mean, that's what I made, the point I made just a second ago. Their resumes all leave something to be wanted. A lot of people have somehow turned the Charlos into the boogeyman, as if somebody, these guys are out there ducking them. I just think it's a case of they just haven't stepped up in competition, so we don't really know what they have. The Charlo brother at middleweight, he's proven a bit more with his, test, against Austin Trout and some others. But again, I just want to see him against one of the best guys in the division. And for me, it's like, when Charlo gets past Harrison, you'd like to see him against, Jarrett Hurd. That would be ideal. The other Charlo brother, you'd like to see him against, Daniel Jacobs or, one of the top guys.
I'd like to see him show up for a drug test.
Yeah, that would.
I mean, because
would be nice,
was it
too.
Willie Monroe supposed to fight on a card? He failed to test. I guess Willie should have just been lost that day, John. But I think that's an issue. You know what I think? I think that to test them every month if you're ranked, or don't test them at all, because this is stupid. And it's just, once again, the house fighter gets the benefit of the doubt.
Well, and not only that, real quickly, I was just going to say,
okay.
No, I was just going to say real quickly, in football, if you miss a test, that's non-compliance. I mean, you're flagged.
Yeah.
I mean, that is the same as a positive. In boxing, it's probably Heyman and the WBC protecting them. I mean, because what they said was that they were off doing some touring or, some PR stuff, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe I've got my story wrong. But I also heard that when Vada showed up to the gym to test these guys, nobody who knew the Charlos knew where the Charlos were. And to me, that reeks of a setup. It reeks of something that's premeditated.
Good, John.
I was just going to add that. Yeah, I was just going to add that, it's not good. Sorong Visai did the same thing last year, and then all of a sudden his fights started ending up in Thailand again. He was also a WBC belt holder. The WBC, I don't like virtually anything they've ever done in history. One of the only things I like that they've done is the fact that this clean boxing program goes through VADA. But, you've had the Charlos missing out, Sorong Visai, and I do agree. It's a bit of a head scratcher. I'm glad he's out of it, frankly, and then Willie Monroe ends up out of it for testing positive. I'm glad that fight's off.
Hey, at least Willie was trying to win, though, John.
I like Korab better as an opponent, but the VADA thing is good, and the guys are probably missing the VADA because the VADA does catch people. So, I guess the way ideally it would have to get is that, if fighters, or if all the fighters in all organizations were under the VADA and they gotta be at the random tests, or they're gonna get some type of a sanction. But you got Canelo's doing that program, and he's got to pay for it himself. And Canelo just got paid $12 million to fight Rocky Fielding, so he can put out the $50,000 for it out of his own money. I think these other guys, it's hard enough to make money. The career's short enough that that it seems like you want to have it, but I don't know if the fighters having to pay for it is really the answer. So it's going to come down to I think the state athletic commissions. The state athletic commissions are going to have to do it, and like Nevada and New York, and where there's bigger fights, and enforce it, and then you'd have to get other commissions to follow. But that's where boxing.
Well, how about this? What if the commissions just mandated the fees to get paid for the title fights? A portion of that has to go to pay for any fighter in the top 10 to be tested.
I agree. That type of a thing is kind of what you need, is that, like, you need Nevada to take the lead with something like that, and then maybe New York, and, then maybe you could get, like, the British Board of Boxing Control to follow those leads or something like that. Yeah, something along those lines. And then you're going to have, some other countries aren't going to comply and things like that. But at least where the big fights are, if you could get that, that's probably, I would say, about the best hope you're going to have.
All right.
Well,
next up, go ahead, Jeremiah.
Yeah, I was just going to say real quickly, though, at least we can all agree that Matt Korobov is a better opponent than Willie Monroe. I mean, at least Korobov can punch a little bit. I mean, Korobov's a good fighter, had a lot of good wins, was an excellent amateur. So, I in a way, I'm happy, that Korobov is in and Monroe is out. Because Monroe, we already know what level he's at. Korobov is one of those guys, he only really got one big shot. And he was actually outboxing Andy Lee before he got stopped. So, to me, it's a good replacement. The odds for an upset are still small, but yeah, it's better.
All right.
Yeah, I'm very happy Korobov's in. And I got to just state the facts. I'm going a little bit against the odds makers. The odds makers do have, and it's not close, they've got Harrison and Jermell Charlo with Harrison at plus 850. That's the closest fight on the PBC card. Myself, I'm, as Jeremiah mentioned, I like Korobov. Even though he's a huge underdog, I like him being in there a lot better than Monroe. That interests me more, that fight with Jermall Charlo. And, Dominic Brazil, he's a huge favorite, but he's fighting a big guy in Carlos Negron. I mean, and Brazil can always be in a war. So I'm just hoping for boxing and boxing fans, since this is free TV, that maybe those two fights, even if the favorites are going to win, maybe they'll be more entertaining than a lot of people would expect. I'm hoping. I'm not saying that's definitely going to happen.
I think with Harrison and Korobov, I think you'll at least get guys to make the effort. So you'll probably get a spectacular ending if the Charlos are as good as their fans and themselves think.
Yeah, well, at least those two guys have some skills. That's what is good. I mean, Harrison is skilled. I mean, he's not some guy that's inept and can't fight.
Oh, he gave Jared Hurd. I think he fought Hurd pretty tough until he got stopped.
Yeah. It's chin and stamina, but he's got skills, and Korobov's got skills and amateur pedigree, and those are the guys that usually have chances to make better fights.
All right, let's go to London Saturday night on Showtime. We've got, and I'm going to bring this up, the main event to me is the only fight that really interests me. But David Price is fighting Tom Little. I mean, why is David Price still allowed to fight? I know you got to let a man do what he wants to do, but at some point, this is getting ridiculous, John.
I don't know why. Yeah, I as I've gotten older, I've more said, well, if a guy wants to do it, I guess you got to let him do it. But should he be doing it? From an outside perspective, no. I mean, how many knockouts? How many knockouts can you take? And the guy's getting older.
And he gets knocked out spectacularly. He just doesn't get stopped.
Right. Yeah, which you hate to say it, but that he's getting more susceptible to the concussion and the head trauma from the previous one. So it's not a coincidence either. So I don't know why the guy is still out there or really in his type of situation, why he even wants to be out there at this point.
My guess is money. Jeremiah? Jeremiah? Did we lose Jeremiah?
I would agree with you on the money part, Mike. That's what is always easy to forget. There's a certain point for these guys where they're not going to make any more money than they're going to make doing this, even with the purses dropping and the risk increasing.
Yeah, and I mean, let's face it, it's never going to get any better for him. I mean, everybody's knocked his ass out, and the bad thing about it is this: he's a guy with some talent. What's your take on, we get to watch the same guy get knocked out as we always do. Seems like every 3 to 4 months we get to watch David Price get knocked out. Don't you think it's time, Jeremiah, that maybe they just hang it up for him?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's David Price himself or if it's his management team who are encouraging to continue. I don't understand. I mean, he seems like a real nice guy. I mean, he seems bright. I've heard him in all sorts of interviews. He's articulate. I mean, to be honest with you, he seems like he could do something.
They could put him on the zone and replace Sugar Ray Leonard with him.
Oh, for the love of God, please replace Sugar Ray Leonard. I don't understand what it is. I mean, all you got to do is go to social media and it's unanimous that Sugar Ray Leonard is we all loved him as a fighter. Well, not really, but we can all appreciate his skill.
He was a great fighter,
and
love him.
He was a great
fighter.
Yeah,
but he's embarrassing as a commentator. I mean, he's too diplomatic. He doesn't want to say anything that can be perceived the wrong way, and unfortunately, that's not really the world we live in anymore. Especially when it comes to sports. I mean, it's unfortunate in a way that being diplomatic is not the approach that we want to take. Because I've been listening.
I thought that was what we had to do nowadays, Jeremiah.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of, sports commentary.
Yeah, I think you're off there, Jeremiah. I think you're supposed to be diplomatic. That's why he's there. He won't say anything stupid.
Well, yeah, well, right, yeah, maybe that's why Teddy Atlas is off the air. But no, well, the thing is, though, is when you look at Max Kellerman and guys who are in similar roles, they have opinions. A lot of times they're not saying anything controversial, but they're giving opinions, right? They're adding color to what you're seeing. Sugar Ray Leonard is he's just bland. He's not giving you any insight. He's not saying anything that really adds value to the broadcast itself, and it's unfortunate. But in regards to Price, I don't know what they're doing. I mean, fighting guys that he can beat and just sort of like being in the public eye, I suppose I could deal with that, and I don't have a big problem with it. But it seems as if, based on his history, what we're going to get is David Price is going to win. You never know. He might be, have another guy that he can feast upon, and then they're going to serve him up to somebody, and he's going to get knocked out again, and we're all going to, put our hands on our head and be like, why are you doing this again? Again, I don't know if it's him. I don't know if it's his management.
Well, it has
Either
to be
way,
him. They're not forcing
something.
him to go do it. I mean, and I think eventually guys like Tom Little are going to start knocking him out too.
Yeah,
when you can't take a shot like that, he'll get upset, so to speak, by one of these.
Tom Little just needs to stay away for about 5 rounds and then go in and start swinging, and he's got a shot to get a win. So, all right, let's get off that. Let's go to a heavyweight fight that should be more exciting as Whyte-Chisora will go for the second time to fight Dillian Whyte. Their first fight was one of the best heavyweight fights of the last decade, with Whyte beating Chisora on a split decision. What do you think coming into this fight, John? I think this is a great matchup for boxing fans. I think finally we'll get a couple heavyweights that'll throw more than 100 punches around or in a fight.
Yeah, I never thought I'd be saying it, but they did have a good fight, a real good fight the first time, and what I never thought I'd be saying is both of these guys this year have been in a legitimate candidate for fight of the year. Whyte in his fight against Parker, and Chisora in his fight against Takam. So it's a good fight on Showtime. It's been picked up on Showtime. Big news on the TV front and the streaming front. It's not on DAZN, even though it's an Eddie Hearn fight. It's on Showtime in the U.S. live in the late afternoon. But it's an entertaining. It's going to be an entertaining fight. I'm looking forward to catching that in the late afternoon. A good boxing fan development in the U.S. I think it'll be a good entertaining fight. I'm gonna go with Whyte. Just go with Whyte. I think he's probably able to win it again. But what I do want to add, even though both guys, like I said, were in fight of the year candidates earlier this year, I'm looking forward to this fight. But I do have to put myself on the record that I don't think either of these guys is going anywhere. They may be top 10 heavyweights at this point, and I think the division's getting stronger. But that's why I think neither of these guys is going anywhere. I don't, Fury's already beaten Chisora twice. Joshua's knocked out Whyte. I don't think either of them, in my opinion, have anything at all for Wilder. And it's already kind of been shown they don't have anything for Joshua or Fury. So they're not anything for the big three. And I think some of these other up-and-coming heavyweights are more talented than them and will beat them as well. But I think Saturday will be entertaining, and I'm looking forward to seeing it.
All right. Jeremiah, do you agree?
Yeah, I think it should be an interesting fight. I mean, Chisora seems like, maybe there's some sort of revival there, because of his performance against Takam. I think, like John, Whyte's the better fighter. So therefore he's going to take it. I think he might get Chisora out of there late. I mean, Chisora's up and down in his performances. I mean, he's had some pretty bad fights in his past, but he's also, like the Tacoma, it seems like he got up and trained for it. And, with this fight, it seems like he's trained for it as well. It's just, Whyte's just better. I mean, there's going to be some sloppy stuff here and there because, Whyte's not a technically, he's a good fighter, but he's not that solid. Chisora, of course, he can be sloppy and a little bit wild as well. But it's fun. I mean, it's good styles matchup. And as I said on previous shows, so long as they're pairing these guys stylistically, I don't mind it. Again, I don't think that highly of the division. I don't think many of these guys are all that good. But as long as you're pairing them smartly, that's all you can ask for. And, whoever wins this fight, they're going to get a big fight. I mean, I don't know if, Whyte could potentially get another fight with Joshua. I'm not quite sure how much sense that would be or who would want to see it again. I suppose they might take the tack that, Whyte's better. He's more experienced. He's had some good wins under his belt. I don't know.
Whyte fight Wilder.
Well, what I think is, as a substitute, because DAZN now has Alexander Povetkin and they have Luis Ortiz, I wouldn't be surprised if he gets Alexander Povetkin, because if Luis Ortiz is actually getting Joe Joyce, Whyte against Povetkin actually makes a lot of sense. So, you pair all these guys up. Again, it's solid. I don't mind at all. You're getting some fun out of it. But, yeah, Whyte takes a decision here.
All right, let's go to a card that I think is actually fairly interesting. That's the Manchester one with Warrington and Frampton. When I look at this, we're going to talk about one of those heavyweights that I think has a chance to possibly be some, and that's Nathan Gorman, Jeremiah. He will step up and fight Razvan Kajanu, who we watched get destroyed by Luis Ortiz. But considering Gorman's not had that many fights, I think this is a decent step up for him.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, Kajanu has some experience. He's been around the block, like you said. But he doesn't pose much of a threat. I mean, he's a guy who shows up. He's a guy who shows up, right? I mean, he's not going to give you the best effort. He doesn't really seem like he's in there to win it. He has more of a sparring partner mentality where he'll give you some rounds, but he's not coming in to win. So, Gorman to me is a Ricky Hatton trained guy, somebody I've been following for a little while now. He's pretty young as well. I mean, with the balding and whatnot, he looks a little bit older, but he's quick-handed. He doesn't have the size of like a Joe Joyce or some of these other big guys, but I like his speed a lot, and he's pretty creative with his combinations. His accuracy is pretty good, and I think he's been paced well. I think Ricky Hatton has done a pretty good job with him. This to me, like you said, is the right step up at the right time. I think he goes through Kajanu, and maybe they'll pair him with one of the young British prospects.
Well, I can tell you this from talking to Thomas Schreiber this week. He thinks they're serious about Daniel Dubois against Nathan Gorman. And I agree with him because he thinks Gorman right now may be a little bit better rounded. I think Gorman could beat Dubois right now.
Yeah, I don't think that's outside the realm of possibility at all. I mean, I like Gorman myself. Again, my fear is that he's a bit like Andy Ruiz in the sense that he's not a big guy, right? They both possess quick hands, good combinations. They're not excellent hitters. To me, there's just some stylistic similarities there. Dubois, I think, needs a little more polishing. But I also saw that Frankie Warren said he didn't want to do that right now. But who knows? Maybe if they feel like, one of these guys, isn't going to reach the top or, it'd be a good enough sale, then they do it. But, I wouldn't mind seeing that fight at all.
All right. What's your take on Nathan Gorman, John?
Yeah, I think this Kazanju fight for Gorman's stage is not bad. So it could be worse. Not bad for the stage he's at. I mean, Kazanju did go the distance with Joseph Parker. Joseph Parker's aggression a lot of times is not that great, even though he got a KO against lesser opposition last week. So yeah, I think that's not a bad step up, but at least Kazanju's been in there with Ortiz. He made the fight. He made the semifinals of the ESPN Boxino. So that's a huge honor there, I guess. Of course, not being serious when Friday Night Fights was on its last breath on ESPN. So, yeah, not a bad opponent at this stage for Gorman. Gorman shouldn't have any problem. But, there's enough interesting up-and-coming heavyweights. Of course, the British guys, you got, Gorman, Dubois, Joyce. And then you've got a lot of others, Hergovic and Ajagba and Kuzman and Kolenko, the Ukrainian guy. Yeah, so I think the talent level coming up is good. You've got some interesting, entertaining guys like Jarrell Miller, Konachki. I think with the guys you got at the top combined with these other guys coming up, I think that the division's looking like it's going to be pretty entertaining for a few years.
All right, next up, we got Martin Murray against Hassan Endam. What's your take on this one? Because I actually think that, John, this is a competitive fight, and I think Endam's got a shot to beat him.
It is a competitive fight. I actually think Endam is a little bit better of the two as a fighter. I think both of them, whatever the best they each were, they're past it. And Dom's problem's always been that, at least in terms of staying on his feet, hitting the canvas, has been his chin. He gets dropped. He gets dropped all the time. His offense and boxing skills are actually good. Murray, to me, he's just kind of a guy that hangs in there, kind of a slapper. I think it's a close style matchup, but to me, neither guy brings much punching power to make it that interesting of a fight to me. I would agree with you though that I think Endam does have a chance to win the fight. I don't know. This is the type of thing that could be real close on the scorecards and kind of go to the eye of the beholder kind of a thing, and it's kind of hard to make a call as to exactly.
I'd say if it's real close, it goes to the house fighter here, which would be Martin Murray. It'd be my guess.
Yeah, I mean, you would think. I mean, the fight's in Great Britain, so Dom's got it. He's on the road here. You would think maybe Murray could edge it out. You think about like his fight with Rosado over there. It was a close fight. Wasn't a robbery, but I thought Rosado won the fight.
Well, that's why I think Endam's got a chance here like because Rosado has seen his better days.
Right, and there's no doubt about that. And that did show me that Murray really was not bringing particularly much at this point. So that one's in the back of my mind. But Endam didn't do well in his rematch with Murata. And Rob Brandt ended up then handling Murata. So who knows? I don't know. I would have to say this is another one though. The part I don't like about a fight like this is, to me, neither of these guys is going anywhere or should be going anywhere at this stage of their careers. So a fight between these two on a pretty major card in the UK, I don't like as a sign of one of these guys is going to turn up against somebody we'd like to see in against tougher opposition. That's what I don't like down the road.
But we know that's probably what will happen. Jeremiah.
Yeah, no, I think Endam has a good chance as well. I mean, Endam didn't look...
Hey, what are the odds on this, John? Are there odds on this?
Yeah, there are odds on this one, and it is very close.
Is it? Damn.
Murray's like minus 200, so he's a slight favorite, but it's close.
We could put all of our money together and make some bank here.
Well, Jersey's got the app now. West Virginia's getting their app, so now we need them to get more fights on there. They haven't had that many fights on the app, and of course we're talking about. Of course, the UK listeners are laughing because they can legally bet on anything, and they've been able to do it forever. But
all you got to do is go online. You go to like MyBookie or USA Bets, or there's all kind of places you can do it legally.
Right, but now we can do it in the States and the U.S. legally on the app. So
I'd rather do it out of state illegally. It's just more fun.
Yeah, more of a thrill to it. But we're getting it. It's just
like John. I've never smoked weed. There's a chance if it stays illegal, someday I could. But if they legalize it, what's the sense?
So you're not going to join Jeremiah in Colorado anytime soon, then?
Well, if I did, it would be legal, and I still wouldn't do it because. Are you saying that Jeremiah's a pothead, John?
No, I'm just saying that that
Jeremiah,
there's no
did you
legal
feel verbally attacked and bullied right there because he basically called you out as being a weed smoker?
Well, not only me. I think all of Colorado just felt characterized there.
So now all of Colorado has been offended, John.
I was just categorizing all of Colorado, not Jeremiah.
That's even worse because now you've offended an entire state.
Well, it's a big industry now, so they're not offended.
Yeah, I think they're offended. Jeremiah said they were. All right. Next up, let's talk about a fight. Do you want to talk more about this fight? Because I'd rather just go to Frampton and Warrington, which I think is going to be a good fight.
I didn't mind. No, I don't need to say anything about the fight. I do think Ednam is going to win. I think he's going to outbox him. I don't think Murray has enough punching power, but it'll be close. That's all.
All right. Josh Warrington, Carl Frampton. This is a fight that a year ago, Jeremiah, I would have thought was one-sided for Frampton. But after watching Warrington beat Lee Selby, it was a close fight, but I give Warrington more of a chance now. And I think the biggest question for him to win is I'm picking Frampton. But the big question to me is Frampton slipping at all? Because I think when you look at him, his fights against Donaire, the second fight against Santa Cruz, do you think he's slowing down at all?
I don't know. I don't know if it's one of those things where Frampton is slowing down or if he's just one of those guys who fights to the level of his opposition. Because, against Santa Cruz, he shows up in tip-top shape and he fights really well. And then, in some of these other fights, I don't know. It's hard to read in between the lines and say exactly what it is. I would say that Frampton is still prime or very near his prime, and either way, it's good enough to get the job done against Warrington. I do like the fact that Warrington showed up. He threw tons of punches. He beat Selby clear, and a lot of us didn't expect that. A lot of people were expecting the taller, more wiry guy in Lee Selby who's held some alphabet trinket for years to do the job. But, Warrington went in there, threw tons of punches. He was sharp. And, I was happy to see it. I mean, Warrington deserved that because he's one of those guys who's had a Ricky Hatton-esque following for years now. He's like a blue-collar guy. He gives it his all. He's hard-nosed, yada, yada, yada. But his problem is always going to be his punching power. He is not a big hitter. And to me, if you're not giving Carl Frampton something to worry about, because even an old Donaire can still wallop, he may be past his best, but he's still got that mean left hook. And unfortunately, Warrington just doesn't have it. He's just, to me, it's going to look like Frampton in his last outing when the guy couldn't crack him, the guy couldn't earn his respect. Yeah, exactly. It's not obviously. I think Warrington is going to last a bit longer than that, but to me, it's going to be similar in the regard that Frampton doesn't need to worry so much about the punching power. I mean, Frampton's taken clean shots from Santa Cruz and others. I just think that he's going to counterpunch Warrington, and I actually think he's going to stop him in the late rounds, maybe with a body shot. Because my thinking is, of course, I don't know. I'm not in the training camp, but I'm hoping that Frampton recognized how effective his body punching really was against Luke Jackson, and he sticks with that for Warrington. Because if you have a high motor guy coming at you, and he's trying to wear you down, again, he doesn't have the punching power to get you out of there with one shot. Body punches are the best way to just sap that energy and get the guy out of there. And I think that's what he's going to go to. I think that'd be a great strategy. And I think because of the body punching, he's going to get him out of there in the later rounds. But it should be an entertaining scrap, and I know the atmosphere is going to be electric.
Yeah, the atmosphere will be great. There's a big following for both fighters in the UK. I agree completely with Jeremiah. I just don't think Warrington hits hard enough. I think Frampton walks him down. I think Frampton wins a decision. I think it's a clear decision, something like 10-2, which means it'll turn into probably a draw and we'll get a rematch. What do you think, John?
I do think that, Frampton's a talented guy, good hand speed, respectable power. I do think that since the first Santa Cruz fight, though, he seems to be slipping a little bit to me. And then Warrington, who I didn't think much of, frankly, pulled the surprisingly effective and relatively impressive performance against Selby, although Selby, for whatever reason, didn't do much in that fight. But Warrington, came with a good effort, put the pressure on, threw a lot of punches, really did look pretty good in that fight. It definitely showed me he had more than I thought he did. And like Jeremiah said, the problem is he's got no power. And so, Frampton doesn't really have to worry about anything coming at him. But Warrington's shown us he's going to be a guy that's going to be hustling. He's a little bit bigger than Frampton for that weight. I think it actually is. I wouldn't have thought anything of the fight a year ago. Now I'm looking forward to it. Odds makers have it close with Frampton just a slight favorite. I do think Warrington's going to make a fight of this because Frampton's coming down just a little bit and Warrington's got more than I thought. But I think Frampton will just have a little bit too much skill that he will win enough rounds to get the decision and win the fight. But I think Warrington's probably going to be competitive in it, and it may even be the type of fight where some people feel that he's done enough maybe to make an argument for the decision or something like that. But
so
that
you think we'll get a draw and a rematch too, huh?
I don't think we're going to quite get that. I think Frampton will win it. I was debating that, but I think Frampton will win it just with a little bit sharper punching. I think that'll just be the difference in it, that he'll be landing the sharper, better shots, and he'll be the better boxer, and that'll, be enough to get him enough rounds to get the decision. But I think it'll probably be relatively tight.
All right, let's go and talk a little boxing news. We talked about this before, Canelo Alvarez, and now it's saying, and I'm sitting here reading an interview with Oscar De La Hoya, which looks like this is definitely a possibility, to fight at Wembley against Callum Smith in 2019, John.
Yeah, I've actually, I kind of, that's not the route I'd like to see him take, but I'm getting a feeling that talk might be serious. They figure he can make a UK appearance. They can sell it with it's the too many divisions thing. They can sell it with the 168-pound belt thing. And again, that's to me where you got to look at the too many divisions because, Callum Smith now is, the ring champ at, 168. I think Jeremiah Transnational still has it vacant, don't they?
Yeah, because
I think
because Callum Smith fought. I think they had Callum Smith at number 3 and Groves at number 1, so that they made an exception there, kind of like they did with Linares and Kroll a long time ago, because Ramirez was number 2. So we only recognize it when it's a number 1 and number 2 guy. Right.
So they don't even. So it's even a stretch there. Callum Smith's not really the universal, champion, even if you recognize a 168. But Canelo's got, the Oscar could have him go after the WBA belt. People saying that Callum Smith's the number 1 guy at 168. It's a better fight than Fielding, and Callum Smith does bring some power, but it's not something that I'm like dying to see. I'd actually prefer the lineal middleweight defense against Golovkin or Jacobs. I'm actually going to say myself, I'm not as down as there's people saying, well, I don't want to see Canelo fight Golovkin again a third time already. I don't have a problem with that. I mean, heck, you got 2 close fights. Why not have it a third time? See what happens. But it looks like they might not be going in that direction. And we still don't know, where Golovkin is going to turn out. I mean, he has talked with PBC. He hasn't signed with anybody yet, so you don't know what's going to happen there. And Jacobs is also a free agent. So, we'll have to see. I think part of that then circles back to, it's not the best card to do it with, but, if this Fox series starts getting ratings, and you saw what Wilder and Fury did on pay-per-view, for PBC. These guys, I think then guys like, Golovkin, Jacobs, they might be seeing other dollar options and take a look at that.
I think in the end, Golden Boy, and this is no shot on Canelo, but I wish Canelo would have the balls that, the guys had back in the 80s just to say, hey, I need to fight these guys. Because I think, I may be crazy here, but it would not surprise me if his 2 fights this year were, at super middleweight and then a fight with David Lemieux.
I think there's concern of that. I think there is legitimate concern of that because I don't think the way this DAZN deal looks to me that they've got the money to pay decent opponents with the kind of money they're talking about paying Canelo. I mean, their model would have to change.
Well, I think with the money they're paying him also, John, they can't afford him to lose.
Yeah, well, they really can't. I mean, they do have to look at that if they're going to try to go through with that deal. I think they're kind of caught in a corner. I don't see the model as workable right now, and it doesn't have anything to do with streaming. A lot of younger people then say, "Oh, it's just fans that have been around longer saying about." No, streaming's been on Showtime already. The Fox fights are going to be streamed Saturday night on the Fox app. I don't have any problem using apps. We can all use them, but it's the point of being on the app where you can't get it anywhere else is not a good move when you got to pay a certain price for the app. So I don't see right now that deal is going to be workable, especially if the PBC on Fox thing does get traction and people get used to seeing the stuff for free when they can watch it on the app for free as well, the Fox app. I think that gives them even more trouble. So yeah, we're going to have to see how that deal plays out. But I can see scenarios now where Canelo might not be fighting the people we thought he was going to fight next year.
All right, Jeremiah.
Jesus, man, this is precisely why we need a fucking boxing league or an organization or something. I mean, to me, it just, I used to be a big fan of the NBA and NFL and MLB, and I analyze some of these conversations that we have, and I'm like, well, all the complexity, all the workarounds that we're talking about, and all the ins and outs. I mean, it's so damn confusing. I mean, it just seems far more intricate than it needs to be. I mean, it would just be nice if you just had even a Dana White kind of figure who's like, all right, well, Alvarez is defending his title against the top-ranked guy middleweight in the world next year. That would just make things so much damn easier. But I wouldn't be surprised, the Lemieux thing, the Callum Smith thing, I wouldn't be surprised at all if that's what we got. I mean, because, they were already talking about David Lemieux fighting Canelo Alvarez if he got past Torreno Johnson. And, the fact that Alvarez moved up to 168 and proved successful, well, David Lemieux's obviously got to move his butt up there too. So, you have a Golden Boy, you have in-house money there. You have Callum Smith, you sell well in the UK. Yeah, none of that would surprise me at all, but it would be really disappointing, not only because David Lemieux doesn't deserve that shot. Okay,
no.
Lemieux's been capped out for years, okay?
And Danny
Just
Jacobs
and
Gennady Golovkin deserve it.
Exactly, and that's the most important point that we can make is that Daniel Jacobs has been, a top guy for years and years now. Golovkin is obviously, we already know. I don't even need to explain that. So those two guys, I wouldn't say need a shot. One of those guys needs a shot. I mean, we like John said, we do have to see where Golovkin is going. Maybe he'll be on some network that makes it hard to make. Again, silly boxing talk.
See, that's the problem.
But
it doesn't matter where he goes. They need to fight. I mean, Bob Arum, Don King used to make fights together because the fighters demanded it. And the problem is this.
Right.
Anymore, the fighters are happy to just get paid.
Exactly. Well, and I think we talked about this on the last show, but all of this could be a recipe for disaster because it seems like they're giving these quote unquote A-side guys, they're giving them these huge paydays, and it seems as if they're cutting into their own budgets for other things. It's like, well, they can't pay another guy that well, or right, with DAZN and Canelo Alvarez, they have so much invested in him. right now, they got to be careful with their maneuvering. It's the thing about it, cut and blank, forget all the, alphabet trinket nonsense. Daniel Jacobs and Golovkin deserve their shots, and that's all there is to it. And like you said, Mike, if they want the fights, they'll be done. We know they will. I mean,
if Canelo wants it, Canelo will get it.
Exactly. These guys they've reached across the political aisle every once in a while, if need be, and so they can get it done. And that's all there needs to be said about it. I mean, Callum Smith's cool. It'll sell well, and potentially could be the best in the world at 168. But does that matter as much as fighting Golovkin or Jacobs? No, it doesn't. And even outside of Golovkin and Alvarez, you have Charlo, you have Derevyanchenko, you've got all these. 160 is hot right now, so there's no reason to avoid the class altogether, especially if you're the 160-pound champ. And I will admit that I will knock Canelo Alvarez if he does go that route. If he fights David Lemieux and Callum Smith, it will just show me that, there's just too much money-driven stuff going on. People are taking the prize fighting thing too literally and not focused on their resumes.
Yeah, because I think what you get then is, to cover it up, he fights Gennady Golovkin May of the next year if Golovkin doesn't lose, because it's a much safer fight then, because Golovkin is aging, and I don't think Golovkin is going to get better than what he is right now, John.
Yeah, well, I think we have to look at, too, is I think that this is where a lot of fans just don't get it, and even some people that know boxing. I think this is a good time to point out why too many weight divisions is such a problem, because let's say which you don't need it. Let's just pretend for a moment that there wasn't a 168, okay? Then you have Canelo Alvarez, lineal middleweight champion of the world. He's got to then debate maybe staying at middleweight and fighting Golovkin again or Jacobs, or if he moves up, this is something we could all get behind and actually get really interested in, to see Canelo challenge, or maybe he's going after whoever, say wins the, something like the Kovalev-Alvarez rematch, or, Gvozdik against Gilberto Ramirez. He's taking on the winner of that for the real light heavyweight title or something like that.
Yeah, but he's not going to do that.
That's much more. Right. Well, right. He's not going to do it the way boxing's set up now.
It's too risky.
That's the thing.
He's not. Now, the way boxing is set up now, John, still does not stop a fighter from demanding a fight be made.
Right. But what it gives you, Mike, what the problem with boxing set up now, which is this is even with people that are quote unquote knowledgeable, and this is why I'll get in debates with people about this, because some of them get it, but a lot of them don't, is the smoke screen that Canelo is going to have that's even going to sell a lot of mainstream boxing writers and people that quote-unquote know what they're talking about is, he's fighting Callum Smith, the number one guy at 168. And then if he beats Smith, you're going to have people fawning saying, he just knocked out the top guy at 168. And
I thought the top guy at 168 was, yeah. I mean, come on. It doesn't matter because Callum Smith is not that good.
That's because there's too many weight classes. And that's right. And that's the thing. Now, if there was only 8 or 9 weight classes, Callum Smith would probably be about the number 10 light heavyweight in the world, if that. Okay? See, that puts it in the real perspective, and that's what the fight would really be. Would be like Canelo, the middleweight champion, stepping up to light heavyweight, but by fighting the number 10 or maybe just outside the top 10 light heavyweight in the world, not some historic event.
Yeah, but see,
in other words,
this is what I want to see. I think people miss this because a lot of people rip Marvin Hagler for not moving to light heavyweight. But Marvin Hagler proved his greatness by staying in the division and making a legacy and cleaning the division out. The middleweight division is good enough right now that if Canelo's on Nevada, he can't take steroids anymore, so he's not going to get any bigger unless he wants to. So why doesn't he just clean out the division? There's enough guys there to give him big fights for the next 3 years.
Right, but part of it is I agree, but I'll go ahead, Jeremiah, in a second, but I just want to finish my point because it fits directly in my point. Because Hagler was the middleweight champ of the world. There was no debate. Everybody recognized one middleweight champ. 168 it was just barely starting then when Hagler was finishing up, and it was looked at as an alphabet joke. their first title fight was Murray Sutherland against Fulgencio Obomahias, two guys that had been knocked out multiple times by Marvin Hagler and Michael Spinks, which tells you just the point about the too many divisions. That's what you would get. You would get Canelo staying at middleweight for a longer period of time, going on a run against all this good competition, hopefully making some great fights. But go ahead, Jeremiah.
No, Mike is making the point, I think, to all of our points, is that if you didn't have this many options, you wouldn't have these bloated damn resumes, like Inua's, like a 3-4 division quote-unquote champion, and, Canelo Alvarez, is now a 2-division, 3-division title holder for some guys. He's, it's so damn Adrian Broner, 4-division titles. I mean, it's so damn bloated anymore. And this is why I wish people, like we all feel, that people should understand that that is not the direction we should be heading. You shouldn't be able to weight jump an alphabet pick, on a whim, just to collect paydays and create some bloated resume. You should want to stay in a main division and defend your alphabet title, until you legitimately got too big for the class, or there was real drive to go up a division to face a fighter that would generate huge money and create a real legacy defining resume. Instead, this is what you get. You get guys like Adrian Broner, who beats Eloy Perez at 130 or something like that, and gets some trinket, hops up to 135, never fights the best in Miguel Vasquez, and then he hops up to 140 and 147, on and on and on. It's a joke. And people need to recognize that and start calling it out more. And if there's one thing, I know we give the British guys shit from time to time. One thing that I will say is they seem to recognize, at least some of them, some of them seem to recognize that this is an issue. Again, a lot of these guys are also recognizing the IBO, but there just are not enough people.
Yeah, but remember this. Most Brits love the super middleweight division because that's the only way guys like Nigel Benn could ever have been world champions. I mean, if Nigel Benn's forced to fight at light heavyweight, he's never winning anything because he was an average fighter. Chris Eubank, the same thing. I mean, let's face it, Stevie Collins beat them both.
That's true.
Yeah, right. No, I'm saying there are those guys who are talking about the IBO, but I do see them. I tagged John on Twitter. I added him not long ago, and there were enough people who were slandering the title as not being legitimate that sometimes it gives you some hope, because it seems as if there's some logical processes being run through that are putting things into perspective. But we just got to do a better job of cutting out all the bullshit to begin with. I mean, there's just too many belts, too many titles, and it's all too bloated.
How about this? If you look at the super middleweight division, since it started in 1984, and I think it was Ernie Singletary that fought Murray Sutherland, because I think it was for one of the first IBF title fights, John. I'm not 100% sure, but I think it was. There's only really been what I think were two all-time great fighters that even fought in that division in the 30 or 40 years it's been around, and that's Calzaghe and Ward. I mean, outside of that, Kessler was really good, but those are the only guys really with Hall of Fame resumes. And a lot of their stuff was done when they moved up to light heavyweight, John.
Yeah, that's the key. If you're going to me, see, I'm in favor of if we would have 8 or 9 divisions that a fighter just stayed there, there'd be no problem with it. Defend their lineal title, and that's where you get a lot of great fights and you get a lot of great legitimate legacies. I think, for fans that are going to recognize the 17 division thing, and that's in Calzaghe and Andre Ward's favor. If you're really a great or making a claim as a great, you've got to be at least able to cover, the original division as well as the created super junior division. Which Calzaghe was at the end, but at least he was able to get the wins over.
That's what I'm
Hopkins
saying, though.
And
Calzaghe and Ward,
and
they're the ones that mattered the most were at light heavyweight.
Yeah, well, that's the way I always looked at it too. I mean, Ward then was able to, beat Kovalev and get a win over Barrera, and Calzaghe had the Jones and Hopkins. Yeah, that's what I look at it. I mean, if the guy can't show me he could have fought in the original division, covered that span, then I'm always going to, be questionable of how great the fighter was. So yeah, you've got to do that.
So, all right, have we trashed the super middleweight division enough yet, or should we keep going? Because I'm good with keeping going.
Hopefully, but it's important though, because the fans have to. This is where fans do frustrate me, and some of the regular quote unquote boxing journalists. I mean, you've got to call this problem out. Yeah, you can't. It's not enough to just say WBA regular or IBO is a joke. We see that, that's good, but that's not enough. I mean, it's got to be, you got to ignore all the alphabet organizations, and you got to get to the point where you recognize
because even
at
8 divisions, we're still going to have 4 champions.
Right, and exactly. It's not enough. It's not enough to ignore WBA regular or IBO. That's why, even though I look at it as a joke, just like anybody else that's sane, when somebody on Twitter or some boxing journalist, the only thing that they're railing against is WBA regular, well, to me, you still don't get the point. I mean, to leave 4 belts and talk about the 4-belt era. The 4-belt era is blasphemy. It shouldn't even exist, or you shouldn't even be talking about boxing that way. I mean, Who decided the WBO should be recognized? Who made that decision?
Who decided the IBF? I mean, the IBF is the bigger problem, I think. And when you look at this, I mean, it skews everything historically, because we always go back to this Hall of Fame discussion, Jeremiah, and not to beat up on the super middleweights, but is there anybody that thinks Nigel Benn could have beat Roy Jones in the mid-late 90s? Or even if you go to the other champion, Virgil Hill. No, he's not. He's not on the level of those guys.
No.
So it slants everything. Tommy Loughran was a real light heavyweight champion. And when you put guys in the Hall of Fame, I don't know how they can be a Hall of Fame when they're in a bastard division that shouldn't be there to begin with, fighting for titles that didn't exist when Bob Fitzsimmons was a light heavyweight or Philadelphia Jack O'Brien. And you're all of a sudden going to make a complaint that a guy like Nigel Benn, Chris Eubank, or you go to lower divisions, Chris John. I've seen guys that are respected boxing guys that think Chris John should be a first ballot Hall of Famer, and Chris John's career was nothing. I mean, he fought 90% of his fights in Indonesia. He won a disputed decision against Juan Manuel Marquez, and then he had trouble with Rocky Juarez, who he probably lost to in his first fight. So this skews historically when we're putting guys that are not good enough to be legitimate champions in the 8 weight classes, or even 9. I'll give you cruiserweights because I think maybe there's a need there. But when you're throwing guys that are in divisions where it amazes me the stupidity of people that think it's all right to have 4 champions in each division, and it also amazes me to people to think we need divisions. Like, you got 100 and, you got like 3 or 4 pounds that separates a lot of these divisions. And it just makes no sense to me, Jeremiah.
No, it doesn't at all. I mean, I think the worst part is that some of these guys do have Hall of Fame votes. It's not only that they think that, it's that they actually can put pen to paper and chalk off some of the names. I don't understand it at all. I mean, and I see it all the time because it's become one of those sports where you really got to cut through the numbers and get to the meat and potatoes of the argument and see who somebody fought, see who somebody beat, because it's all just so damn bloated anymore. And I'm with you. I mean, and I know John is too. A lot of these guys who are, quote unquote legends in these junior/super divisions, guys like Antonio Cervantes and Costa Zoo, who I really liked, and tons of other guys who made a living. Aaron Pryor. To me, they may have been damn good fighters, really good fighters, but had they had to compete in a 8 division setup, I mean, if Cervantes goes to 135 and he fights Duran, he's getting his ass whooped. I mean, if he goes to 147 and he's competing
right.
if he's going to 147 and competing against Jose Napoles, the dude is done. He's not making that living. If Costa has to go up and fight, the De La Hoyas and Shane Mosleys and Vernon Forrest of the world, he's not getting it done. As much as I like the guy, Wilfredo Gomez, who was is widely seen as potentially the best Puerto Rican fighter ever, and I do think he was a damn good all-around guy. We see what happens when he moved up to 126. He got beat down by Salvador Sanchez, and that's the lens that I view a lot of these guys in. It's that they couldn't quite make the cut elsewhere, so they carved out their little niche in their division. I mean, look at Wilfredo Gomez. Again, very good fighter. Look at his competition. Okay, he beat up a lot of no-hopers. Ricardo Lopez is another guy who was, a wonderful technician, fluid, good punching power. Okay, but who did he fight? I mean, he didn't fight Arbachakov or Carbajal or Gonzalez or, Mark Too Sharp Johnson.
Who would have all whipped his ass.
He beat a ton of guys who, and I would encourage anybody to just go watch the fights themselves. I did it myself a few years back. I just figured I'd watch them. He didn't fight any great fighters there. And the addition of too many weight classes took it all away from us. I don't blame all of the fighters, for working within this framework, this structure that's been given to them. They're just making the most out of the opportunities. But you look at a guy like Roman Gonzalez, who kept moving up, and to me is a great fighter because he took on the challenges. But Ricardo Lopez, he didn't do that. He was too busy at 105 carving out, trinket defenses. And so, again, that's the way I view these lenses. We should demand more of the sport because of that. I mean, the fact that we have missed so many, like go to Nigel Benn, for instance. Nigel Benn, damn good fighter, right? Okay, but if he's forced to choose between 175 or 160, is he going to be the guy? No, he's not. I mean, look at the 80s, 90s. Okay, Michael Nunn, Sambu Kalambe, Julian Jackson, McClellan, Bernard Hopkins coming up, Roy Jones who went through there. There are just tons of damn good fighters, and we missed tons of damn good fights because of that. Well, plenty of these guys did not fight each other because they can move up to 168 or they could grab this alphabet trinket and not that alphabet trinket. It's ruined the sport. And on top of that, the Hall of Fame selection, they don't have any clear standards. So, again, you're getting all these alphabet soup guys who are getting in. It's a mess. It's a fucking mess.
Yeah, and if you look at Nigel Benn, I think the best fighter he fought was Michael Watson. And Michael Watson was not a great fighter. He was a good fighter.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Chris Eubank, he was a good fighter. I mean, there's nothing here. When I look at this, Chris Eubank beat him. Stevie Collins beat him twice, and everybody always says, well, Stevie Collins beat Ben and Eubank at the end of their careers. It was also the end of Stevie Collins' career. I mean, Collins only fought like one fight after he fought the last fight against this guy. And the thing about Stevie Collins is a guy that ran around and called out Roy Jones constantly. I don't remember Nigel Benn and Chris Eubank pushing for Roy Jones to come see them or for them to come see Roy Jones.
Well, I even think that I thought I remember Chris Eubank was hesitant about fighting a guy like Michael Nunn because he said that Michael Nunn was essentially Harold Graham but better, and Graham was a damn good fighter himself. I mean, anybody who watched him
Nunn could hit harder than Graham, and Nunn was a little quicker.
Yeah, and he was bigger, So and technically he was better as well, So, but this is the thing: is we got to sift through all this nonsense because of the divisions, because of the titles, et cetera, et cetera. And worse, in my opinion, is that, well, it's not worse, but it's just, added to, it's insult to injury. What is happening is now the WBO is being seen as a legitimate title, not only now, but it's being imposed on the past. So now it's, okay, now Darius Michalczewski had 21 title defenses, and that's the record. And now, Spanotki had 20 defenses or whatever it was of his title, and now that's a record, or it's near it, or whatever.
Francesco Damiani was a heavyweight champion.
Michael Benn was a heavyweight champion.
Yeah.
Artur Gregorian has more title defenses than Roberto Duran. I mean, it's become a joke, man. All this historical revisionism, it just hurts the sport. I mean, it's just everybody. It seems like it plays too much to the tribalism, where we're all wanting our guys to do better, and then we need these bloated belts and
Well,
stuff
isn't
to
that
make
why
us
we
feel
got
better.
the WBO? Was so the Brits could have some champs? Because let's face it,
Yeah.
you would think that the English dominate boxing. You know, because I hear these idiots that go, well, we invented it. You may have invented it, but it was perfected here. That's why 90% of the fights between Americans and Brits end with the Americans winning and the Brits fawning over guys like Frank Bruno because, well, Frank gave it a go, but he got his head crushed. And when you look at it, there's not one British fighter that anybody thinks is a pound-for-pound top 10 guy. And when's the last time there was one?
Well, that's just where some of the Brits and the Europeans who are otherwise intelligent fans really frustrate me, is because, I think it's from all the years of American dominance that they were quicker to recognize these things like the WBO and all these divisions and belts, where then they could, say their guys were champs instead of, when you basically had one champ that people were paying attention to it in a division, and people weren't paying attention to these super and junior divisions. And then, a lot of the British and European challengers were getting knocked out. That's the thing, is that's where it's harder to break through. The fans in Europe, the UK, the United States, Mexico, everywhere, they got to get together and just, not be looking at all these divisions and all these belts. The fans do have really a little more power than they're exercising there, and that's the boxing journalists too, and that's what gets frustrating.
Yeah, and when you look at the top 10 pound for pound, which they got like 20 guys from ESPN vote, you do have Anthony Joshua at number 10, but usually having a heavyweight in the top 10 pound for pound rankings, Jeremiah, is not a very good idea.
No, I don't get it. I mean, heavyweight is one of those things where it's hard to recognize because the skill level is worse at heavyweight. So you have that. Not only that, Joshua is he's a big guy, right? But the competition for heavyweight is not as fluid as it is for other divisions. So if I'm at, currently if I'm at 160, potentially I can move down to 154, wait for guys at 154
put it like this.
Could
you imagine Canelo at 6 foot 200 pounds? He would beat the living crap out of every heavyweight there, John.
Well, Canelo is a strong looking guy.
No, I'm talking about if he was an actual heavyweight. He's not a strong looking guy. I know you're talking theoretically, and I don't want to get crazy. Skill level.
But I'm
the
just
same thing with Gennady Golovkin. If you put Canelo's skill in Dillian Whyte's body, Dillian Whyte would end up a top 10 heavyweight of all time, probably.
Well, at the risk of sounding crazy, what I'm just saying is when you think of guys like James Stoney and things, I'm not sure that you might not be seeing Canelo go heavier than you might have ever dreamed down the road. I'm not sure how far it goes, but
without the steroids, I don't think that's happening.
I mean, because he does have defensive skill, and that's the thing. So,
he's not big enough. But my point is, if he was big enough, guys like him, Gennady Golovkin, Vasyl Lomachenko, a heavyweight version of Vasyl Lomachenko, I mean, come on. I mean, the people that think Anthony Joshua's top 10 is nuts. Now, I think he is the best heavyweight in the world, probably. But go ahead, keep talking, Jeremiah or John.
Oh, I know your point, but I was just thinking that, literally, that's not really what the pound for pound list wasn't originally invented, really, for heavyweights. Just in more recent years, you've seen that done, because the idea was to have a list when heavyweights got all the attention to, recognize the more skilled guys from the other divisions. So it kind of didn't go around with the original principle, but it's just a theoretical thing anyway.
All right, guys. Next week, I think we've got a title fight in Japan, but other than that, not much else. So I think when we reconvene to do this show again, it'll be on this night, if that's all right with you guys, and we'll do our Fighter of the Year, Trainer of the Year, Fight of the Year, And we can argue about that if you guys want.
Yep, and hopefully we'll get some good action on Saturday.
Yeah, I think we will. I think Whyte-Chisora, you're probably going to get a good fight. I think Warrington and Frampton will be a good fight. So it's got to be better than
and you never know
last week.
You never know what's going to happen. You never know what's going to happen with Dominic Brazil. Somebody will be getting knocked out at least.
Well, and
it'll
the same
probably
thing with
be
David
McGrone,
Price.
But yeah, but Brazil will be knocking somebody out or getting dropped. So.
All right, Jeremiah, any final words?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, there's probably something we should have picked up on a while ago, but I just want to say, whoever listens to this podcast, if you get any value out of it, please go to wherever you're listening to, whether it's, at iTunes or, wherever you can leave a review, leave a thumbs up or a rating. Please do so. We very much appreciate it. Sorry. But yeah, if you find enjoyment out of this at all, help us become the biggest and best boxing podcast in the world. But yeah, just leave us a 5-star, a thumbs up, or whatever it is, and one or two sentence review and help us out.
Yeah, because most of our listens are through the website because that's the way it is. But if you've got an iTunes account, you can jump over there after listening on here and just go on there and review it. Don't say anything too bad about John because his feelings get hurt too bad.
I can take it. Just throw the feedback out there.
Next week we'll talk about Joshua and Wilder. That way we can end the year with a bang. All right, guys, we're going to wrap it up. Tomorrow, Survive in Advance with me and Steve Risley at noon. We will have the voice of Purdue Boilermaker football on. I can't remember his name right now because I'm an IU fan, but he's friends with Steve. But he'll be on for Friday Football Frenzy. You can go to thegrizzlytruth.net and find the interview I did with Thomas Triber about the Frampton-Warrington cards and his opinions on Tyson Fury in the heavyweight division. I think it was about a 40-minute show you can find on thegrizzlytruth.net. Also, next week, make sure you check us out where we do our year-end review. Give us the fights of the year, fighter of the year, all that stuff. So make sure you check us out then. All right. You can hear us on Spotify, iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, Spreaker, Stitcher, wherever you find sports podcasts, you'll find The Grueling Truth. So for Jeremiah Preisser, John Einreinhofer, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.